pushing. This is a very boring slide, but I believe in birther-led pushing. And so I believe in practicing pushing strategies, but I don't believe that one method of pushing is better than others. And that I don't believe that not purple pushing is superior to just exhalation pushing or open glottis pushing. There is evidence, the research supports further lead pushing. For coach pushing, it supports shorter duration pushes now, and that in terms of mom and baby's oxygenation, that's a better option. I don't know if that study talked about perineal injury or not. But however, someone who's in labor, whether they're medicated or unmedicated, feels like they need to push, that's what I would encourage. If someone is needing coaching, again, if the evidence is supporting a shorter duration, so not a 10-second coach push, but like 3 or 4 second pushes. And in terms of closed versus open glottis pushing, I feel like often people use, when undisturbed, a bit of a combination of the two. And so that it's this nice big inhale, it's maybe opening and closing, or like a semi-closed glottis, right? So maybe that's like a moan or like a noise as they're pushing, so that glottis is a little closed, and that's creating some more of that downward pressure. But in there might be some grunts, there might be some closing of that glottis to help encourage that assist that pushing down. Lindsay McCoy, who's actually local birth worker here, who has a whole humongous training program for birth workers. Her and I have done her podcast a couple times. She lives in the cities, and she talks about down arrow pushing, and I really love that, and I use that with my clients. And so we'll practice this down arrow breathing or down arrow pushing in all sorts of different positions. We'll do it in standing, we'll do it in side lying, we'll do it in all fours. And basically what she's talking about with that is that when we're going to visualize both our inhale and our exhale are creating this down arrow. So we're thinking you're inhaling down arrow, exhaling down arrow. And so to me, that was just like a really good visual in terms of, oh, I'm just going to push like that. Well, I can push like that and kind of like push in my belly. I can push like that or push even into my butt. But we want to encourage pushing on an exhale potentially, or on an inhale with that down arrow at vaginal opening. So if you want to practice feeling that, is that we're going to breathe in, feel down arrow into vaginal opening, and then as we exhale, we're keeping our down arrow. What I tend to have people play with is, well, what position do you feel that better in? Right? Like I can feel my inhale down arrow decently in sit, but but if I come into like an all four position and have something in between my knees, right? I can feel more effective down arrow pressure as I exhale in a position where I may be supported with adduct. Or if I come into side lying, right? That's a little big, but if you came in, say you came into side lying, you had hip in a little bit of internal rotation, how does my down arrow feel as I breathe in and I breathe out there, versus if I take my knees wide how does my down arrow feel there? And I really, as soon as that knee comes wide, I really can't feel a great down arrow as I exhale, versus when I come in here, it's easier to make sort of that mental connection. I've heard other people call it sort of a blooming breath, and that as to start practicing toward the end of pregnancy, instead of thinking inhale, expand, exhale, lift, we're thinking inhale, expand, exhale, keep expanding. And I like that concept as a concept for like softening at the end of pregnancy, but in terms of it relating to pushing specifically, I just have really liked that visual of the down arrow. Another concept with pushing is that pulling can also sometimes help us counter that. When I think about using lats and using abs with a push, and so often we'll talk about using our long sheets, maybe tied onto the squat bar if there's a squat bar, or pulled by a partner. And so this wouldn't be the angle necessarily. But even if we were laboring on back, maybe with an epidural, if that's a situation at that hospital, is that we could still use sort of lat engagement, abdominal engagement to help us with that down arrow push and creating power for that pushing on exhalation, or inhalation, or on a closed glottis, right? And again, when it's further directed and they know their options in terms of I can do this with an open glottis or a closed glottis, that's autonomy, and that's informed decision making. And so that's all good. My own personal story with that was that I had a difficult birth, my first, and so did a ton. I mean, my first was why I got into this. It's why I do this. And so with my second, going through that process, was like, I'm going to just breathe this baby out. I'm going to be so gentle with this pushing. It's going to be so calm, and it's going to be just, awesome. And yeah, it was not that calm. It was not that calm. It was pretty intense, and had pretty intense like fetal ejection reflex. So my body is like deciding, okay, you're pushing, and you can either come along with us or not. And so in those last couple pushes, because I really only had to push a few times, I was like, oh, like I could breathe and use my exhale and stay very gentle with this, or I could close my glottis and get this done in one more push. And so I felt really good about that autonomous decision to go, I don't want to push 3 or 4 more times. I don't want to have 3 or 4 more contractions like this. I would really like this to be over, and was able to make that decision and felt really good about it. I also tell people is that tearing happens. Tearing is normal part of birth. First and second degree tears are normal. When we're talking about third and fourth degree tears, I would say that would maybe be more pathologic. But even still is a variation upon normal with giving birth. And so when clients come in and they're kind of processing their story, and they're like, I purple push and I tore really bad, and I, and they feel a certain way about that. Something I talk about is that, sometimes tearing is a normal part of birth. Your body did what it had to do in order to get your baby out, and we have tools, and we're going to work on getting it better. And so, so the messaging and the language around like, oh, purple, doing a purple push being bad, I get it, because those long duration glottis holds can increase that pressure. But But I don't demonize it because it is an option for people if needed. And sometimes babies need to get out quickly, and that's the only option that's the most that's the fastest option for that person at that time. Okay.